So Channel 79, I will call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order for Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. And we have everyone here tonight except Jim Palin, who is out with his family for break this week, but glad to have everybody else here. So we've got a few things on the agenda today. First up is a quick discussion of the proposed contract with the Darien Town Employees Union. Jennifer, you want to give us a quick overview of that?
Yeah. We had lengthy negotiations with them, but we were able to come to an agreement that they ratified. The Board of Selectmen has already approved this contract. If you approve it, it will go to the RTM for next week, and then we can get it implemented. The main points of interest are on wage increases. They have retroactive wages to 7/1/18 with a 2% increase, and then on 7/1/19 and 7/1/22 and a quarter for each of those years. We did make some progress on health insurance. That's been a focus on our contracts. We were able to get the MACV pharmacy, which is a little more restrictive. And we do have employee cost shares increasing 7/1/19 to 7.5%. They're currently at 6%. On 7/1/20, they increased to 9%. And on the last day of the contract, they increased to 9.5%.
Okay. Were there any changes to OPEB or pensions or any of that sort of thing? Because I noticed there was we've got something to approve a little bit later that is an investment to look at the police pension changes.
Right, that was part of their negotiations. We did have some actuarial services related to this as we were looking at different options. The one change that we did get was for new dispatchers hired on or after July 1st would have the option of participating in our existing retirement plan or into a defined contribution plan. We don't have that established yet. We only have 3 dispatchers at the moment. No one has been hired since 7/1, but it's the start of getting a defined contribution established.
Okay. What's the current posture for all that for other town departments? So if you sign up and you're a new employee, can you still opt for a defined benefit plan?
Yes, that is the only option right now. We have about 30 non-represented employees who the town can kind of make that change without having to negotiate anything. All of our other employees are bound by contract. So this is the first one that even broaches the defined contribution plan.
That's good. Well, my view is that we should always end up with a contract that's fair to all sides, that makes certainly progress from a taxpayer standpoint, but excuse me, is fair to those union employees. And based on a comment here at the end, it's the collective view, I take it, that this in fact was a fair settlement.
I think it was.
Okay. I've had a chance to read through it. I didn't have any other comments on this. Did anybody have any questions on the proposal?
Can you briefly touch on some of the MACV on this program?
So right now we have the least restrictive. Whatever your doctor writes is what the pharmacy will fill. We want to get more restrictive and guide people towards generics. So the MACB requires a doctor to dispense as written. The most restrictive would be MAC-A, which would require the doctor to say that it's medically necessary to get the name brand.
But there's some data that suggests there's savings as a result of going to the MAC-A.
Okay, so what you need from this board is simply a recommendation, something we should vote on, or just sense of the board? Because I know this really is for RTM approval.
Right. You should take a vote to approve forwarding the contract to the RTM.
Got it. Okay. Motion to approve the Board of Finance forwarding this contract to the RTM for its consideration.
Could I just ask 2 quick things?
I'm sorry, please.
Sorry. Jen, just going back to the town's retirement plan versus the defined contribution, did you say 30 employees?
We have 30 non-represented employees who don't have to be bargained into a particular retirement plan.
Okay. And my other question, just real quick, is under the medical changes, the second bullet where it says cost savings for the medical changes for financial year 20 are estimated 15,000, then 12,000, then 4,000. What am I missing there? Because if the employee's portion is going up, it's going up to 7.5, 9, and 9.5, shouldn't the number be going up in terms of savings?
It's additional
That's per year.
further.
Right,
Wow.
it's incremental, so we get
Oh, an
15,000 the
additional,
first
sorry,
year,
okay.
an additional 12 the next year.
And then an additional on top of
additional.
that, okay. Just misread it. Okay.
And I had a quick question about, there was some language where the parties didn't reach consensus. Can you talk about that?
That's at the
Right
end
at
for
the end.
further consideration.
Let me refresh my memory.
Last sentence of the
last-
last paragraph.
Yeah, it's the
Before
last.
summary.
Parties did not.
Oh,
reach-
so the main issue that we did not reach consensus on was we're trying to provide flexibility in the language to allow us to look at town hall hours being something other than a Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. The contract right now has language that says after 7 hours in a day, they get overtime. After 8 hours in the first hours of straight time, after 8 hours, they're at time and a half. What we were able to accomplish was providing more general language on what a workday is. It's generally 8:30 to 4:30, but it can be changed with bargaining. In order to look at the possibility of maybe 4 longer days or stay open late one night, something like that, we need to address the overtime language. We weren't able to get there during the contract negotiations, but they did say that would be something that we could come back and bargain as a separate issue. That was the primary issue.
And part of the problem was there weren't firm plans.
Right.
So they were reacting a little bit,
Right, we were coming at it
Right.
from two different
Yeah.
ways. We wanted to get the ability to even have a different schedule before proposing a schedule, and they wanted us to propose a schedule before agreeing to modification. So that's one thing that overall for town hall we're trying to work towards, and we'll be going back and meeting with them about it.
and the other was the performance.
The performance evaluations, that's also something that would be new to this bargaining unit, and they were somewhat receptive to the concept of performance evaluations, which are not currently done, but just the actual process, I think, was a sticking point in terms of appealing maybe a supervisor's evaluation or having some other input from the employee.
Other comments or questions? Okay, motion to recommend this to the RTM by the Board of Finance. Paul, second Rob. All in favor? Great, 6-0, thank you. Okay. Next item is discuss and take action to accept donation from the Fireworks Committee. It's an explosive topic, so just to be
It
clear.
is, it definitely is. It's really bad.
No, it's worse than bad. But I couldn't resist, please. On that happy note.
As a dad joke.
So for years, there's been the fireworks committee. And they have struggled over the last couple of years with planning and putting on the fireworks. So they worked with Parks and Recreation for the last fireworks. It worked out well, but the committee held the funds, but Park and Rec helped to plan the event. Now we are looking to have Park and Rec take over the event, and with that would be the funds that are left for the committee. They want to donate to the town to be used for the upcoming fireworks. So this would allow us to accept the donation as well as appropriate it into a new Park and Rec special revenue fund to accept the donations in there. We'll put in other revenues that they charge for parking, that kind of thing. And then all expenses related to the fireworks would go from this special revenue fund. They would not run through the general fund.
Is there any particular reason for that? I mean, this feels like an enduring event, right? And I worry about creating funds that where the monies could get lost or forgotten about for a while, as opposed to something like this that's a regular event where you're going to have town funding going forward. Is there any reason that you preferred to do it this way?
The hope is to not have town funding going forward. There has been talk of not the committee as a committee doing fundraising, but there's still being fundraising to put on the fireworks, fundraising done outside of Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So this would allow us to take those funds in and not be subject to the annual appropriation schedule where they lapse as of June 30th, because it's also a difficult timing with the fireworks. This would be a fund that will roll any balances to the next fiscal year.
Okay.
And the fundraising would take place by a separate committee and then get transferred into the town fund, or how would that work?
Yeah, it would. From my understanding, I don't know if it's one particular individual who would still be interested in doing the fundraising or some kind of a group of people. But if there were fundraising, it would be a donation to the town of the funds that are raised and go into this fund. The other thing is being a little bit forward-looking. Parks and Rec, when they got their new position a couple years ago, it was part of that position was to have planning and these larger events which might have sponsorships or donations. And this fund is something that we could use for those. They have Weed Beach Festival that they just started up and is growing. They'd like to do a big townwide event at Highland Farm. So those are the types of things, if they got sponsorships or donations, we could separate it from the general fund and keep it in here and roll it from year to year.
Okay. I'm okay with this. Anybody have any further questions? Okay. Motion to approve the resolution as written. Jamie, second. Diana, all in favor? Great. Okay, next up is discussion, take action on the proposed bond sale.
The resolution that you have before you lists the amounts to be borrowed for each of the items. This is pretty much what we talked about last meeting. Two small changes. I believe it may have been Jim Palin asked about the amount that was listed for the turf field, just based on our year-to-date spend. So that I looked back at the information from Mike Lynch. They expect to spend about $565,000. So originally we had before you $585,000 for that project. I brought it down to $575,000, the $565,000 that they expect to spend plus $10,000 for issuance costs. And the other change is on the DPW garage. They had a couple of small items come through as they worked through the winter, and they've had to adjust some of the mechanicals and that sort of thing. So we did bump up about $5,000 on the DPW garage just to get them those last few things as they work through the full year since they put the building in operation.
So
There's a little typo here.
Where?
That we probably ought to fix it. You say 575,000 general obligation bonds of the five. Don't we want to just say of the town authorized?
No, it's actually because we're issuing $575,000 out of the $585 that was authorized.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thanks.
It's cumbersome wording.
Okay.
Thanks.
So a couple questions. So what's the total bond issuance that's coming from this
Total
resolution?
bond issuance is $4,185,000. What you had before you last month was $4,190,000.
And that's just standard to round it up from. Yeah.
Right, we issue in $5,000 increments. So
Yeah, because
Okay.
it did look like a rounding.
Does this, for all the projects for which bonding is contemplated in here, are all those projects currently completed? I mean, the garage is, but I just wonder, are there other straggler expenses that we would reasonably want to pick up in a bonding in the future?
The garage is complete, and this is bonding enough to cover all of our expenses. We have not paid the final bills on the high school cafeteria, but this borrows the remainder. This will fully bond what was authorized, because they do expect to spend nearly all of it, and then we're borrowing the rest for cost of issuance. The sewer project is complete. The town hall generator is currently in progress. The Holmes Elementary School roof and skylight is in progress, but we are looking to borrow the full amount. Same with the town hall generator, we're borrowing the full amount. And then there's the baseball field, which is in progress, and we have the estimate that they will spend $565,000 on
Okay.
that.
Does this clean up all the cash deficits that you noted in these projects when we go through that periodic analysis of that?
Yes.
Okay. That's an important thing because in some prior projects, we were not able to capture those deficits and get them bonded and had to pay them out of fund balance or
Correct.
whatever, so.
And these
okay.
we're borrowing the full amount, but the project is not yet complete. If they end up spending less than we have borrowed, that money can be transferred to another bond authorized project.
Terrific, okay. This is really great. Any questions about this? Okay, motion to approve this bonding resolution. Paul, second. Rob. All in favor? Okay, great. 6-0. Okay, next topic up are some transfers.
One other item on
Oh.
this is we have to appoint a Board of Finance representative
Oh, I'm
for
sorry,
the
I missed
bond
that.
sale. The sale is scheduled for March 19th. We're usually at 11 o'clock. You can either be in person or by phone. And then
At what time?
11 a.m.
Okay.
And then the other pieces that we need somebody who would be
I'm on
available
lunch
to
as well.
stop in and sign paperwork before we close. The closing is expected to be April 2nd, so it would be probably that week before that we would need to just stop in and sign some paperwork.
Okay. I mean, I could call in for that. Would anybody like to do this? All right, I'll do it.
Okay.
You know what, I'll do it, Joe.
Either way.
I'll do it.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
Let's let Rob do that.
19th, 11 a.m., right?
Yep.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. That's great.
If there is any time, any change in the time or the date, I'll let you know.
Thanks.
Great.
I could stop by in a second if that's useful.
It has to be signed by the same person who
Oh, sorry.
does the
Oh.
sale.
All right. Well, there you go.
You got a big old, you got a
big-
big pen?
A big axe.
One of those.
A silver
That
pen,
signs
maybe.
multiple. We don't do that anymore.
Oh, jeez.
All right. You've taken all
Take
the
it back, John,
elegance.
it's all yours.
Okay. I'll just come in and put an axe. It's about all I can manage. Okay, transfers.
The first transfer is from the police department. They have a captain who is retiring the end of this month. Therefore, they need to look for internal promotions, or they are expecting internal promotions. They do not have a list of eligible individuals. So they need to test in order to create the lists for lieutenant, sergeant, captain, lieutenant, and sergeant. So we expect kind of a domino effect as they move through. To do so, they are looking to use BadgeQuest, who is a very common provider of tests, and it will be $36,000. The lists that come out of the tests are good for 2 years.
Okay, we've had these guys do this work before in previous promotions, so this is not unusual at all. First of all, congratulations to Captain Lawler. I mean, that's a great thing, and we really appreciate his service, but this all seems fine to me. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one question. The process suggests there'll be a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
I think they have to look at everybody, though, is the reason for that, right?
I think everybody has the opportunity to take it.
Okay.
I see, because I was thinking that in the scheme of things, there probably wouldn't be a lot of candidates, right?
It could, anyone who's in patrol could.
They can
test
apply,
to-
right? They can apply
move
and take
up,
the
yeah.
test.
Yep.
All right, well,
Is
I
it
might-
standard practice to have the outside assessors come in to do this?
It is. It is. They've, back in the day, Don was telling me they would have an outside company do it every 2 years, so they would always have a current list. They've moved away from that. They use an outside company more as an on-demand when they need to create a list.
And I didn't understand the link between the retirement of Captain Lawler and the need to create a list. Is that because there just isn't a list? Or?
Right,
There's not enough-
there's not a current list,
Right.
and they can't promote without a list.
Okay, got it.
And the account, there is money in the account, right?
In the professional services account.
But they're going to use it for something else.
Right, I forget what
Okay,
that's
okay.
planned for, but they did not budget for
This.
testing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm okay with this. Anybody else have any questions? Motion to approve? Frank, second. Paul? All in favor? Good, thanks. Okay, next transfer, actuarial services.
So
So we
throughout,
talked about this before.
right, throughout the police contract negotiations, we asked our actuaries to look at costs and savings of some different possible changes to the retirement plan, some new ideas, some revisions of the existing arrangement. And with all of those came a bill So we had them we had requested several scenarios, so the bills have significantly exceeded what we had budgeted in this account.
Yeah, I'd be interested at some point in maybe getting a briefing on what some of those changes are, if any of them have been proposed or have been enacted. As I've said publicly many times, I don't want to play around with anything that increases future obligations or exacerbates that. So I don't know whether there were any concrete proposals that came out of this.
There were. We have a sort of tentative agreement with the union at the moment. So I can speak with Kate and Lori and see at this time what we could share with you.
Okay.
And at the very least, I can ask that when Kate drafts her letter or her memo that would accompany any agreement for your approval, that we can give you a little more
Or changes to the
information about what
pension
we-
plan, maybe that are being contemplated subject to Board of Finance approval.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, it would be
So in
part
other
of the
words, we would
contract that
be-
would come to you for approval.
So in other words, we would be briefed at some point, and maybe now is just too early, given the
Yes.
stage of that negotiation.
Yep, because it would
That's
be,
fine.
any change would have to be in the contract that will come to you for approval.
Okay.
Could any of the work done on the police pension plan be applicable to other pension plans?
Not really, because they have their own pension plan with its own criteria, and they looked specifically at the police population.
Okay, I'm okay with this. Any other questions or comments? Motion to approve? Rob, second. Paul? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, next up, review of idle capital projects.
This was what we started in the summer, and we talked about doing this twice a year to look at any project that had not had any expenditures or activity in 18 months. So we do have a handful here. They are all, I think there's a plan for all of them. There are none that jumped out at me as ones that we would want to close. In some cases, it's been either a personnel issue, staffing issue, or in a couple, they had to revamp what they had originally done.
Well, my one comment on this is I think this is a great initiative, which is keeping track of these projects so they don't just sit with unexpended funds. It also is just a reminder to people that we are looking at this stuff, and if you're going to have a project and get it approved, you need to do it, and we need to move on. So I think keeping track of this like this is great, and it looks like everything that is idle has a reason to sit there for a while longer, and we'll go from there. How often did we decide to do these reviews? Every 6 months or so?
Yep.
Okay, I think this is terrific.
Some of these are on the kind of the capital improvement plan for, not for this coming year, but the following year. I'm trying to remember. Like that.
Were there projects that are listed here that are
Yeah,
sitting there for proposed funding, additional funding? Well, there's a couple on here where the funding's not adequate, and they're like the conversion of natural gas in Rowan Heights, they're going to ask for
Right.
another 20. So that might be part of
Right,
it.
that's part of, what I was thinking of, and that's the same thing is true of the town hall generator, right?
Right, the town hall generator, the budget currently includes $50,000 additional.
I'm okay with this. I don't think this needs a vote. Any other questions?
Just a review.
Nope,
I
great.
found it really helpful.
Yeah, this is great, really. Okay. Review administrative transfers.
And this was also, we had talked about doing this twice a year. Would have liked to have done it in January, it didn't happen, so we're doing this in February, and then we'll do it again after the close of the fiscal year. But so far in this fiscal year, either myself and Kate, through your giving us administrative authority, have approved 11 transfers that totaled $6,821.
Well, this is a good initiative. I mean, these are administrative transfers that really don't need our input. I think currently we have a limit of, what's it, 3,000? Is it five for you, and then how much for you and Kate combined? Or is it, I forget. I think there's a split authority for that. Anyway,
There is.
the point of this is that we get away from doing these minor transfers that really are course of business that they can do themselves, and allows us to focus on big stuff or stuff that's personnel cost related.
Right, actually, I'm 500, myself and Kate up to 5,000.
That's it.
And
Yep.
then we have the like to like if it's full-time to full-time within the department, something like
Right.
that.
Okay.
And when you look at it summarized like this, it's a real step forward to not have to be discussing these.
Do you want
at-
applause now?
Yeah, at every meeting.
Well, Jamie was telling me that the $127 for human services really did merit a lot of conversation. Oh, sorry, okay, just checking. Great, this is terrific. It streamlines everything. So any comments from you, Jennifer, about the limits we've set up and whether that's still working, or is, I always
So,
want to know whether that needs to be revisited.
I think, we had them in place for the end of last fiscal year. It was very helpful. It allowed us to close things out much faster. It's working well again this year. I think the limits are,
They're fine.
I think they're sufficient.
Just
and
let
then,
us know.
And we haven't had anything that might be, under the limit but controversial.
Great.
And if that were to happen, I'd bring it to you regardless of the limit.
Okay, good. All right, let's talk a little bit about our budget process. What I did was print out, and Kate updated this for us, so the printouts that you have in front of you of our spreadsheet, this is the same sheet that we hooked up 2 or 3 years ago that we're using again this year to keep track of our budget. This includes not just the expenditures for the operating budget for really the whole town, Board of Education, capital debt service, everything, but also a sense for where we are currently and what's proposed with regard to FTEs there on the right side. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about was just to kind of level set where we are as we start our process. So this sheet has all of the proposed budgets for the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education loaded in here. And a couple of things that you'll see. One of them is that the Board of Education, Kate or Jennifer did update this for the vote that they took the other night. So if you look on page 2, that's down from almost 3%, down about 3/4 of the way down, where it's got total Board of Education expenditures. It's now 2.65%, I think was their number, so rounded to 2.7. So they did pare back their budget before they voted to send the budget to us. In addition, you can see just above that under Board of Selectmen, the increase of 6.5%. That's driven partly by the increase in the FTEs that you see over there. And if you've listened to some of the presentations, this is around town dispatch or police dispatchers, but that's not it. There was
Park and Rec.
there's Park and Rec, and there's maybe planning and zoning.
The new positions that Kate put forward were 3 dispatchers and a restoration of a Park and Rec
Right.
position.
Okay. So we've got that to contend with, but that's driving a lot of the 6.5% that you see. One thing that we have not done, but Kate or Jen and I have talked about it, is which of the capital projects we want to recommend for bonding, which would come out of, did you take those out? Or
I did not.
Okay. So if you flip a little further into the section that's on capital projects, you'll see that there's a few big items in there, namely around the Finley roof replacement. There is the short lane property improvements. Anyway, of those expenditures that you see, I identified maybe 3 of them tentatively worth $1.3 million that we would reasonably bond as opposed to including as an operating expense. So when we look at the mill rate that the spreadsheet's generating right now based on where we stand, that's before we take out any of those projects for bonding. So that'll certainly improve the proposed mill rate that we end up with. But I just wanted to point that out to everybody that we have not done that. One of the things I'd appreciate everybody doing is taking a close look at those capital projects and let us know which ones you think reasonably could be positioned for bonding. The ones that Jen and I talked about, just to make sure we've got that on our list, are it's the Henley School roof, which was $550,000. Do I have that right?
Yep.
$550,000. The short lane property improvement, which is $475,000. And there's one other, I've lost it.
Highland Farm, $250,000.
Highland Farm, $250,000. The sum of those is $1.3 million. There may be other things that we could consider bonding. I don't like to get super aggressive about that, but anything that meets our general criteria that says, look, this really is truly non-recurring. It's something that's going to manifest its value over an extended period of time, right? It's not a couple of years, but 10 or 15 or 20 years. And it's reasonably large, right? It's not $50,000, but it's not, but it's something that's larger. So those were the three that jumped out at me. Maybe there's a few others that we could take out, but let's give that some careful thought. I'd like to collect your feedback before our next meeting so that in the spreadsheet that we discussed, we can reflect those changes in here and start to get our minds around an evolving mill rate as we march through the process.
Where's the Island Farm?
It is up in the town.
Should be one of the first ones.
Yeah.
Bottom of page 2.
Yeah, bottom of page 2, Highland Farm improvements, 250,000.
Oh, okay.
But John, it's the Highland Farms.
Yeah, Highland Farm.
It's the Hindley.
Hindley roof for
Hindley roof.
$550.
It's the bottom of page 2.
Highland Farms for $250.
$250.
And $475 for the short lane property. Okay. So the last thing to point out is, based on where we're standing right now, again, not taking out those capital projects, if you flip to the last page, we're currently looking at a total amount to raise for taxes is up 4.1%, and a mill rate increase of 5.2% based on where things stand right at the moment. The reason that the mill rate is higher is that the grand list is about $100 million lower. And so something to keep in mind, but based on this right now, this is, again, assuming we've not moved out any capital projects, nor have we cut anything at this point, but we are looking at a 5.2% mill rate increase. Not trivial, and certainly a departure from last year, which actually had a very slight cut. So we definitely have our work cut out for us on this and need to pay close attention to this. But right now, as it stands, we've got a...
Seems to be a call to arms, Mr. Zabrowski.
It is indeed a call to arms, and we need to take a careful look as a general matter, but we've got a lot of staff increase proposals in here for dispatchers, and there's just a lot to think about. Two other points to make on this. I have not changed our budget assignments from last year, and so if you look in the spreadsheet printout, these are all listed out in the second column there where I've got leads for that. Most of them are pairs of folks. I've got Frank, Paul, and I teamed up for Board of Education again, so we'll look at that budget pretty closely. But I've kept all the assignments the same. Remember that this year we still want to make sure that we pair off with the buddy system with the RTM F&B representatives. So I'll make sure to get this to Jack. They've already started some of their reviews, which I think is great. But to the extent that we can pair up with them and not only include them on anything that we're doing, but vice versa, to reach out to them and say, okay, if you guys thought about the police department, for example, if you've been working separately, what have you come up with? So anything we can do to further that process. Keep in mind also that unless we can't get answers that satisfy us from Kate, we want to try to do the same review that we did before, come up with the same questions, everything identical to last year. The only change is we're just going to take those questions to Kate first, and let's see what she says. So what I'd like to do is within the next couple of weeks is to get through that process. If you look at the calendar, which I've also passed around here, same one that was in your packet, but an extra copy. So if you just look at what's on tap here. So the Board of Education has already approved their budget. Today's the 19th. We have our meeting. The Board of Selectmen's got their final vote on the budget on the 25th. So that means both budgets are ready for our review, and they'll be presented to us formally on March 5th. That really is the start of our process in terms of our inquiry. So pretty important that we get started on that, I would argue, before these dates even come about. And let's get started on our assignments now. The statutory meeting, which we have to hear all parties with respect to the budget, as it says here, that's set for Tuesday the 12th. So if you can come to that, that'll be good. That's not a meeting where we typically say anything. We just want to make sure we give everyone a chance to speak out about that budget. And then, of course, a tour of schools on the 16th. So the rest of this calendar right now is blank. We have 4 review dates set for March 19th, 26th, and April 2nd and 4th as budget work sessions. I don't know that we need to populate those dates with any particular topics that we want to cover. I'm going to kind of let the workflow over the next 2 weeks determine that in terms of, A, which topics do we really need to talk about, and B, how much time do you think you need? So I still think that we will have discussions of our budgets like we have in the past. And again, really the only change here is we're just going to take our questions to Kate instead of to the department heads, but reserving the right to meet with those heads in the future if we need to. Does that all make sense? Anybody have any questions about the spreadsheet, kind of our process that's coming up, this calendar, any aspect of this? Any questions about budget assignments? Okay, so if I could ask everybody to take the spreadsheet, we'll take one more, let's take one nice look at it. We might actually take out those 3 projects. We'll send this around to everybody as a fresh updated sheet. Definitely take a look at that, and I'd highly recommend that you get started on the budgets that are in your area of responsibility. Reach out to Jack separately, that's fine, and coordinate with his team. And let's get started on this so that we can get all of our questions posed. I would like to have all the questions posed and answered before we have our review sessions that start on March 19th. So in other words, you should have had a chance to look at these budgets, ask questions, and when we start the review sessions on the 19th, remember, those are sessions where you're going to present your budget. And what did you find? Are you happy with that? Do we need to make a change? Do we pass? Do we move on? What is that? So just keep in mind that deadline. It obviously gives us a month to work on this, so there's definitely time. But please do come prepared to talk about your budgets on these review dates. So what I will do by email is I'll send around a note to everybody that just says, look, these are the 4 dates, and let's just allocate where everybody wants to talk about which budgets, and we will try to populate those so that by the time we get to the 19th as our first budget review meeting, we've got the budget sessions laid out there as to who's going to talk about what. If we can do it efficiently, maybe we can cancel one of these budget meetings. We don't need all of them, but I'll tee that up in my note as well. Sound okay? Any
Sounds
questions
perfect.
about any of that? We have been to this rodeo before. So, okay, that's great. Let's see, financial report.
So Jen, you
I'm
would
sorry.
sit in with Kate if we talked to Kate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So financial report. I am happy to report that last month when I told you that the tax collector said property taxes seem to be running a little bit low. By the end of the month, it completely normalized. So she's very comfortable with where we are through the January collection period. I do want to point out that on your report, when you look at the percent collected of budget this year, it's 98.64%. The last 5 years through January is 91.3%. That's a little misleading. We have, about a year ago, we put in place a more automated posting of tax collection receipts. So where there was a significant lag before, especially after a heavy collection period like January, it's much more real time and we're getting those posted. So that's what's really driving the difference in the percent collected, more timely and efficient posting of that information. Other revenues, we have gotten a second educational cost sharing payment from the state. So state revenues are over budget from what we had conservatively budgeted.
And we budgeted 0 for education cost sharing, correct?
Right, and we expect to get about 400,000.
Okay.
To date, we've gotten about 206. Then on the expenditure side, there's really nothing of concern.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this report? Nope, I did not either. So again, thank you for that. Steady she goes. Looks good. Approval of minutes. What did you want to do with these, Diana?
I wanted to table the minutes till next time because there are significant changes and I have a couple of questions to ask.
Okay.
And some of them are to ask of you. Yeah.
Okay, we want to make sure we're clear about your malevolence.
Well, it clearly didn't reflect, I think.
Mellifluousness.
Mellifluousness.
I'm going to actually have to check that.
Melly is the Latin for honey. Melly.
So, if anything,
Just saying.
watching Board of Finance meetings gives everyone a chance to hear vocabulary debated with the good senator. Okay, so we will table these minutes until the next meeting. Special assignments and committee reports. So a few things on our list. We've got obviously we've had the union update, so Frank sits in on a lot of these meetings. And I just wanted to say thank you. We really appreciate that.
It's kind of fun to spend the time with Jen.
I question your standard for fun. No, with Jen, yes, of course, but I just meant in the union discussions. Okay, well, we appreciate that. So it sounds like we're kind of fully briefed on all that, given that that's wrapped up, but thank you for that. Anything on the audit committee?
No, did we not discuss that?
We had that meeting after, we had the call after our last
Okay,
Board of
well,
Finance.
all right, great. We had, yeah, thank you very much. So it must have been the same week, right?
I think so.
Whatever, it was a Friday. Rob, you called in,
Yes.
and we had a discussion, 2 items. Rob, you raised one. Remind me? No.
You got me. What did I did? I raised.
Funny.
I did raise something. What did
Yeah,
I
there was a.
Is it a comparison
OPEB.
of? I'm sorry.
OPEB.
Yeah, how did we do
Yeah.
with the reference group,
Correct.
right? Rob,
Yep.
right? You want to explain that a little bit? Or not?
No.
You want, how about if we
Yeah, we'll pass
Jen
that.
explain that?
Yeah.
So we're about 50% funded on our other post-employment benefits, which is a relatively newer trust fund that we have set up. And the question came up of how do we compare, is that, 50% seems a little shocking that maybe that's not good, but comparatively it is very good. We've been making progress. So Bloom Shapiro actually pulled together our usual suspects for comparison as well as some others, and we do compare very favorably.
It was a good follow-up, and it was a funny sample, but it was okay. But it was also a funny distribution.
Yes.
And we didn't, we weren't way out there, but we were in a top group. We weren't, it was interesting that some people were substantially higher, a couple. But it wasn't a bad report. It's just an odd, I'm not sure if there's a policy that should be taken around that. There could be.
Right.
We do fund our actuarially recommended amount each year. I think that's the best approach. It's just going to take time to build up the funds in there. We've had decades to build up our pension funds. OPEB is maybe 10 years that we've been working on it, probably not even. There's no requirement to do so. But,
No. And
we're doing the right
I'm
thing.
not sure there's anything to benchmark against except what you did.
Yeah, keep in mind that the state didn't start to contribute to any of its
No.
retiree medical until
Absolutely not.
for the last 10 years. Is
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should
The-
hope for
the other-
Medicare for all.
If I may.
Yeah, it's funny about that. That would be fantastic. So that's the one Democratic thing I'd sign up for, just to help the state.
One other issue did come up, and I think we should discuss it here, and that was in the actual calendar year and budget year is going to escape me, but we had 4, 5, maybe 5 years ago, a matter here related to special education and the nature of how we were administering the grants and how we were conforming to the State Department of Education's reporting requirements, and there were clearly issues. We conducted a special audit and put ourselves in compliance. And so the question I asked was, given the sober nature of that report, how are we doing? And so the report back from Bloom Shapiro was that that was of a substantial nature, that they would be required to take substantial time outside of the capacity that they would normally have budgeted for the work they would do for the town of Darien. And they were looking for guidance from Jennifer or from the Board of Finance as to what our wishes might be to pursue that. But it was certainly not going to be a normal expense that they would encounter in their audit.
Well, as an historical matter, right after that report went down, so this is 2014, if I'm recalling, we had the auditors take a look at that closely in one of their audit years, as I recall. and had some extra funding built into the scope, but we've not done anything since then. And so to your good point, it might not be a bad idea to ask them to take a brief look at that, whatever audit appropriate sampling would be, to
Yeah.
ensure that those calculations are being done
And that's
correctly.
exactly right, John. What they did do at that time, again, now it's coming up on 5 years, was they did a sample. They didn't do every single file. They sampled. So the question is, one, should we do that? At what expense? And at what level of detail that would in fact be a representative sample? I mean, I'm not sure, Jennifer, but it was certainly not, we didn't have the ability to respond, and they left it for us to come back to them.
Right, they'd be more than willing to do a separate engagement. I think what you had or originally asked was if they had looked at each of the original recommendations
Go
from the
back to what was in fact the recommendation,
Right.
around which that sample report had been conducted, and then again, if it's 4 or 5 years, how are we doing in a current standard of compliance against what was recommended at that time? It's an assurance to the town, particularly to the families that were at that time organized and concerned, and I think it would be, I believe it would be salutary to everybody just to have that assurance.
Yeah, I guess the question I would have is, a big part of trying to get this right was not just auditing the numbers, but a conversation with the Board of Education to make sure that they had the right talent. In other words, the folks with the right education and training and the right organizational structure around them, such that all this math was done correctly, right? I think one of the things that the report revealed 5 years ago, if I'm remembering, was that these folks had in fact did not have a lot of training, or they had other job titles where that wasn't their main job. And some of those filings have a degree of complexity that just requires that, well, you have training to be able to do it properly. And so that was one of the things that was
John, I mean,
surfaced.
it was a really interesting experience for those of you that were reading about it at the time. It was a sobering experience to see what was happening. There was also, on a counter party's case, it was pretty clear that while we were not in conformity with best practices and outside of what would have been normal compliance, the enforcement from the State Department of Education was also lax. So, again, I'm not pointing my finger at anybody here at the state. If there was a statutory requirement for us to be in compliance, we had to adhere to it. There was enough sloppiness to go around that included administrative standards, management oversight at the local level, and enforcement at the state level.
Yeah, so one question would be, would we want to try to get the auditors to take on this additional minor assignment with some additional funding, or should we start with an inquiry to the interim superintendent and the Board of Education to just ask them, in other words, where are you guys in terms of personnel? What is their level of training? How is it organized so that you can take comfort as a board of education that this in fact is being done correctly? And then finally, what auditing and testing are you doing to substantiate that? So I'd almost like to pose the question to them, and then we can use our judgment as to whether that feels about right. If it doesn't...
Good. Okay, great. And
What do you think?
I completely concur with that, John. That's well said. And I want to make sure it's clear in terms of jurisdiction that we're not putting our nose in where it's not welcome or where it doesn't belong.
Which is why
this
I'm suggesting
emanates
that.
from an audit, an annual audit that we, as an audit committee of the Board of Finance, were reviewing. There was a specific federal and state grant supplements to the audit that we had packets for, and it just was an inquiry I was making when it came to the review of the state transfer payments report. Just so it's on the record, this didn't come out of left field.
Right, no, that's totally right. Jennifer, comments on?
I think your approach is the right one.
Yeah,
Start with them. They're the ones who are implementing, find out how it's going, and then if you aren't comfortable,
Yeah.
We
can
reserve
dig
the right
deeper.
to do that?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
can touch base with them during our review process of the
Yeah, that's
budget.
actually not a bad idea, but that's coming right up.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll do that.
It
Good.
makes
Okay.
sense with the change in management and
Right.
right.
Okay. other committees. Jim's not here to talk about the cafeteria. What else do we have? Pear Tree Point.
Building Committee. So there's been a lot of activity there. We had the RFP was issued to find an architectural firm to help with the design, and we spent a whole day interviewing 5 respondents. There were 5 responses to the RFP, and we shortlisted 3 of them, largely because there were 3 that were within budget and 2 that were well outside the approved budget. And we brought all 3 of those folks back to speak with us, and they all had very credible presentations. But we did end up landing on a firm called Land Tech, and we made that recommendation to the commission to see, to move forward with Land Tech, who were both within budget and met all of the criteria.
Great.
So that's where we are right now, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow night. So I'm sure that will be moving forward.
Okay, more to come on that. Any other committees or assignments to report on? Okay, Chairman's report. Couple things on my end. The Oxbridge Building Committee for the Oxbridge Elementary School has gotten started. We had our second meeting just the other day, last week, and we're making pretty good progress. There's great talent on that committee, a lot of people with building expertise, and it's pretty good. It's being co-chaired by Kip Coons from the Board of Selectmen and then Duke Deneen from the Board of Education, so we've got the right people chairing that. A couple of things that we're working on right now. First one is, like you guys, selection of the architect, and one of the committee members is spearheading that. One thing that did come up in the discussion was around funding before we get to having a lot of money to be able to do this. And so this is funding required to engage the architects and get some of this preliminary work done, which you kind of have to have done to get to a bid, to have a number to put to the RTM for appropriation. So just like the Public Works Garage, there needs to be some seed money to get this to work. And one of the things that I recommended was, well, we have to spend the money in a way that it can be bonded in the future. So we'll let Kate and Jen make sure we stay on track with that. But we also don't want waiting for an RTM appropriation for this initial funding to slow this down. One thing I am worried about, though, is that to get through all of these, all the work that's actually required to even get to the bid, let alone actually start the project, I think we are under a very tight time frame to get this finished in the time frame that they proposed for the project. I'm a little skeptical about that, but I've emphasized to them that they should not be waiting on any of this. We have Board of Finance contingency money to fund some of this stuff immediately without an RTM discussion. I emphasize at the same time that we're going to include them in the entire process, right? No decisions are going to be made about spending Board of Finance contingency on this unless it's necessary, without having a discussion with the right folks from the RTM. So we'll be careful about that. I just don't want that process to slow this effort down, given the tight time frame. In any case, we're going to be in constant communication with everybody. This is just a vehicle to provide funding quickly if we need it, so things aren't slowed down. So that's where we are on that. Jennifer, any questions or comments?
Do you have a rough estimate of what that design amount might be?
So I'm recalling it was a couple $100,000 just for the Public Works Garage. So if we're talking about something that's 10x the size, I don't think it would be 10x that fee, but certainly $500,000 could be something that we need to come up with. But keep in mind, the Board of Finance contingency would be used if we need something before we can get to an RTM appropriation date. So we're going to be mindful of the RTM's calendar, and if it is money that's needed because we simply have to get started before the RTM is in a position to approve an appropriation, that's the only reason we would spend this, and we would do it in consultation with them. So more to come on that, but we don't have a firm number.
But we wouldn't run past the number. The budget number is like 400 typically, right?
I mean, something like that.
Well, you have your capital contingency, which is
about 800,000,
Yeah.
which is what I would envision for this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will double check with bond counsel what the process is if we were to appropriate and then get a bond authorization afterwards, what the allowable expenses are and what the timing would have to be.
Yeah, I don't want to spend this money and then not be able to bond it later.
Because
as part
the
of
intention
project.
is that we would bond the full
Correct.
amount.
Yep. The only other thing to mention is that there are lots of proposed rules and proposed legislation emanating from Hartford that could have a significant impact on the town of Darien, from school regionalization to segregation of property tax revenues to all kinds of things that could become very, very expensive for this town. So we have previewed this as part of the State of the Town address in December, where we did some scenario planning just to give everybody a sense of how expensive that could be. I think at the top of the list is teacher pension sharing. We don't know what that number is going to be, but now there are formal proposals to do exactly that and to get towns to partake in the funding of those pensions. So more to come on that. I mean, I certainly recognize that the governor's got his work cut out for him if he's going to try to address some of these issues in a responsible way and do it in a fashion that tells the world that Connecticut is resolving its problem and is in a position to create an environment that is business and job growth friendly. And that's the only thing that's actually going to solve these problems. So he's right to pursue this, but we are certainly potentially looking at some serious things coming down the pike. As these resolutions start to crystallize, one of the things I want to try to do is with the model I set up for the December presentation is to capture those things and then get back to all of you with here's what we're hearing in terms of numbers once they start to quantify it, and let's just take a look at it. But I think the main thing to keep in mind is there's probably not much we can do about it. This is a small town, and that's in a very big pond. And the main thing, though, we can do is make sure taxpayers are kept informed so that we can always tell them this is what we're hearing, these are the numbers that are being presented to us, and these are the implications for you, the taxpayer. Your mill rate's this, here's what you're going to pay on top of that for what we're hearing. And here are the numbers of the relevant representatives to call.
Let me add, John, that this is the odd year, so it's what's known as the long session of the legislature that meets normally between January and May. And so it's often out of kilter with our timeline. And we're at a time and place right now where some recommendations are made by the House and or Senate committees of jurisdiction, but are typically driven by the Office of Policy and Management. That's where you're going to see most of these ideas that will be coming out. There'll be some back channeling and some work done by various advocacy groups, but largely these ideas are in very tight quarters. They're held pretty close to the vest, and then when they're feathered out into the public, as this regional education plan was, that came from the Senate Majority Leader in the Senate, Martin Looney. And I don't want to get into my position on that. I'm not entirely opposed to it. We have some small schools that have no economies of scale, but when you look at the legislation, the way it's written, it could imply any district because they put a population on the number. So that's an idea from the legislature. It's not from OPM. But I do think the teacher presentation that was made a couple of years ago was not unreasonable. It would hold to local account certain skin in the game, but at least at one point in time it would pass along to the school, to the local school districts, a cost that was typically not borne by us. I mean, personally, I think that's on the table, and I think we're going to see it happen. So these scenarios are the
with
kinds
the change in how those are negotiated, or with
no, it's who's going to pay
negotiations at the
for
state
it.
level?
Yeah.
It's
Just the
we have skin in the game on paying all that stuff, but I see no verbiage anywhere that suggests we're going to have a voice in the structure or generosity of those pensions going forward. So this is about taxation without representation.
Pretty much,
That's an issue.
pretty much. So, I think I personally would handicap that as an example of something that's going to happen. And the reason for that is the only way you tackle all these issues. This is a structural issue. It's the structural debt. It's the future obligations that are the ones that are crowding out our ability to do anything. But I think that's a great practice, as much as we can get early signals, as much as we can get from Terry Wood, any information she has, the better. But it's almost nothing we're going to be able to do about it. That probably won't be resolved, if it's contentious, until that last night, unfortunately, of the end of the session.
Right.
So, and which is in May.
Yeah, so more to come on that, but my commitment would be, as we are able to quantify some of this stuff, that we'll try to report, to analyze it and report implications to the taxpayers, and just let everybody know and make sure they're kept informed. So,
What's the time frame on the Oxford?
well, let's see. I think what they wanted to do was to try and have it ready for the start of the 2021 school year? That can't be right. Maybe that. Anyway, it's an aggressive, it's a very aggressive timeframe. It's basically a 2-year project, though. A 2021 school year start, I think. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, I think we're ready to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Okay, Rob, second. Paul. And we are adjourned.